a personal guarantee in a franchise agreement. What is it? This is a promise to the franchisor that in the event that your entity, your business, your franchise business is unable to meet its obligations to the franchisor, that you, as an owner, as a guarantor, will personally be responsible for meeting those obligations. Now, most of the time, obviously, these obligations are monetary, like minimum fees, royalty fees. Maybe you fall behind on inventory or equipment purchases. And then the big one at the end is maybe a liquidated damages or an exit fee that you have to pay. We have a video about liquidated damages, by the way, on our channel, so check it out. And so those are the biggest considerations of where the personal guarantee, what it could touch, right? And what the reasons are that number could be inflated. Exit fees, royalty fees, minimum fees, things like that. So it's a promise of franchisor that you will meet those obligations. Now, where this is a concern is that in some states, Texas, for instance, where I'm based, we have very generous debtor protections, right? So the home that you live in is protected. A franchisor will never come and take your home in the state of Texas. A credit card company will never come and take your home in the state of Texas, the home that you live in. Now, if you have a second property, if you have a second home or a summer home, a dacha, as they're called in Russia, they could take that, right? If you have a rental property, they could certainly take that. They could take other forms of property that are not exempt in your state law. Some states, although, so Texas is very generous, a lot of them in the West are, some states do allow creditors to take your home, though. I've heard this is the case in California with certain caveats to that and restrictions, but that's a scary thing, right? In those states, you need to really think hard about that personal guarantee, what it means to you, and think about ways to mitigate that risk. So, mitigating that risk, let's chat a little bit about that. This is a conversation that really, to dive deep into, it's really got to be one-to-one. I'll tell you, as an attorney, we have to know a little bit about your situation, what your concerns are with that personal guarantee before we jump into recommendations. But just in general, I'll talk about a few. So mitigating it in the franchise agreement, this could look like a cap. So maybe this is a time cap. So the personal guarantee only exists or is valid for a certain number of years, maybe the first term of the agreement or maybe the first 5 or 6 years, because that's obviously when a business is going to be most vulnerable and that personal guarantee may be most likely to be used is in the startup phase. So that's a time cap. Another cap could be a monetary cap. So you're liable for the personal guarantee up to a certain dollar figure. That's probably less popular than the time cap, I would say, just because it's sometimes kind of hard to estimate what an appropriate personal guarantee cap would be, a monetary cap. And I'll be honest, most of the time it's 6 figures, right? It's going to be upwards of $100,000 for what that cap would look like. And another potential way to mitigate it would be there's different names for this, but it's basically like a rollover period or a what's the term? It's like a rolling window. I know there's a legal term that's slipping, or an industry term that's slipping my mind at the moment. But basically what it is you're responsible for a window of obligations that moves continuously in time through your franchise agreement. So basically you're responsible for the last 18 months of personal guarantee obligations. And as you move through after 6 years, you're not responsible for the first 3 years of personal guarantee obligations, but you're responsible for the most immediate 18 months behind you in time. So that one's very popular with franchisors because it gives them, and even in commercial real estate, right, in leases, because it gives the franchisor assurance that they're going to keep their losses on their end quite minimized, because they're not going to move beyond that 18 months unless they are assured that they're going to collect, right, that they have those back fees paid. So those are a few ways to mitigate it potentially in the franchise agreement. Whether you can negotiate it with the franchisor is another very fact-specific situation. There are some franchisors who are open to discussing those modifications and making revisions in the right way, making sure it's the right fit for the way they are doing business. Some franchisors won't touch it, and that's just the fact of reality. It's either you play ball and promise those obligations to join the system or not, right? Or you don't join the system. So if that is the case, how you can mitigate it outside of the franchise agreement is looking at your personal assets and taking steps to put those assets into vehicles or certain types of entities that will protect them from a creditor. So this is wealth and asset protection. It's not something that we do every day. We can help counsel you through some of the initial steps on that, some of the initial ideas and thoughts and key questions to ask. But we're going to refer you definitely to a wealth and asset protection planning attorney or an estate planning attorney for you to have a deep dive into those questions and to do what's best for your assets, right? So for instance, if you are a family and you have children and your biggest consideration is protecting your wealth to pass on to your children, the steps you're going to take are going to look a lot different than if you're a single man or woman who wants to keep your cash liquid so you can use it, and you don't want to put too many barriers in place between you and your funds because you want to use it immediately, right? So for instance, with a family, probably a trust would be a great option. For an individual who wants to have liquidity, maybe offshore banking accounts or offshore holdings is going to be more appropriate for you. So anyways, that's just a quick example of how it can be mitigated outside of the franchise agreement. What that will look like is completely unknown. I can't give you a formula for that because it's very individual, it's very fact specific, and there's an analysis that I have to do with you as a client before I even give you recommendations, right? We got to answer some of those key questions. What you have, what your potential problems, right? What your potential debts are, and what your biggest considerations, what you want to do with that wealth. So, so that's personal guarantees in franchise agreements. Wanted to share a little bit about those key terms. If we can help you understand those key terms in your franchise agreement or help you franchise your concept, let us know. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear your story, hear about where you're going, and be on your team, right? That's our job is to be a great team member and help you build your business. So reach out to us at Reidel Law Firm. We'd love to work with you. Take care.